NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village, offering research-based arts, music, fitness, and lifelong learning programs at their assisted living and Alzheimer's care community in Westfield. armbrookvillage.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, homegrown in Hatfield, Massachusetts, and providing energy savings for their customers for over 10 years. Learn more at northeast-solar.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, we'll show our love for both the game and vocabulary with Word Nerd Emily Brewster and discover just how much love there is in sports terminology and perhaps even the whys of it being there.
And I will be the biggest nerd and share with you some travel-oriented and beach-focused games for those of us who kind of got to stay home this weekend instead of going to the ocean like we want to.
Alas, but we will fill your cups up, even though I will be going to the ocean this weekend. Woo!
I have to live vicariously through you and all of the meeples in these games. Well, now we'll head to the place that is making the elixir, the cups you are going to raise to me in my missing honor. And we'll see what these elixirs are going to be made from in the Berkshires.
Who's Franz Ferdinand? Should I know that?
He was assassinated to start World War I. Oh, right. And then there's also a band.
They're basically a disco band in rock clothing. They're delightful.
My name is Chris Weld. So I'm the founder of Berkshire Mountain Distillers.
My name is Will Wynn. I'm the head distiller and operations manager here at BMD.
How long has Berkshire Mountain Distillers been distilling here in the Berkshires?
Legally or illegally?
Let's start with legally, and then we can talk about the speakeasy stuff.
Short window, but 16th year.
And what brought you into the world of making spirits here in the Berkshires?
I like to say family history of drinking, but people don't think that's funny. So basically, distilling is a good amalgamation of a lot of things that I like. So it's got science and working with my hands and agriculture and good spirits. And so my family had moved back to the East Coast from California. We ended up on an old neglected apple farm and brought the trees back to fruition and thought we'd start off by making apple brandy.
And is that where you indeed started?
That's where we started and ended that pretty quickly, realizing that it's pretty hard to make a living selling apple brandy in the U.S.
After the apple brandy experiment, what was the next move for you, Chris?
I had a consultant from the islands come up, somebody who had spent a lot of time in the islands with mostly Appleton rum to learn how to make rum. So rum's one of those things fairly easy to ferment, but it has to age, or it doesn't have to, but our rum is aged, so it's something I wanted to start with, put some stuff in the wood, in a barrel so it can start aging, and then from there went into gin and then vodka, which don't age. We do have some barrel-aged gin.
I think the product I get from you the most is your whiskey product. So when did that enter the mix?
Whiskey probably 2 years after the launch. The problem with being small and a startup is things have to age. Whiskey has to age. And so there's a bullet Harrison has a line something to the effect of that bourbon's the only thing Americans have to wait for. As a new startup, when you're trying to pay your bills, that's a long wait.
For people who aren't familiar with the process of distilling, essentially, and this is oversimplifying it, everything first is vodka, essentially? Is that a fair assessment?
That's a little bit of an oversimplification.
It's like a real oversimplification.
Yeah, I started with that.
I would say that everything can become vodka. Everything starts generally as whiskey, other than your products like rums, brandies, which are more fruit bases. But most spirits in general, you could classify them as a whiskey at some point because they are majoritively made from different grains. Like our bourbon is a corn base, the rye whiskey made with rye grain. Vodka is just the more and more you process it and the higher you can distill it to, you're then creating vodka from that. So everything starts as whiskey for the most part and then can make its way into different categories along the way.
Okay, I like that simplification scale better. Everything starts as whiskey and ends as vodka and can be anything else along the way?
Yes.
Also too simple?
All bourbons are whiskey, but not all whiskeys are bourbon.
Right. Explain the difference with that. And I think a lot of people think that all bourbon must be from Kentucky, which is also not true.
That's not true at all. Bourbon is proprietary to the U.S., But there's what are called grain bills, so the composition of the grain that denotes what type of whiskey it will be. And then there's a very strict aging and distillation component to how whiskeys are classified as to other spirits as well. So a vodka, you have to distill to a much higher proof. A whiskey, you cannot distill to that higher proof. And then whiskeys are grain-based, so you can't make a whiskey out of grape juice or molasses, but you can make a vodka out of grape juice, molasses.
And whiskey becomes bourbon when?
That's interpreted in different ways. People always think 2 years to be a straight whiskey. Somewhat nebulous and depends how you interpret the beverage alcohol manual from the TTB. But basically, parameters on how much corn has to be in it, how high you can distill it to. You can't distill it over 160. You can't age it over 125. Bourbon, the Coopers had some in with the regulators then because it has to be aged in a virgin American white oak barrel, which to be fair adds a lot more character to the whiskey. So,
I mean, I kind of want to get into the nitty-gritty of your particular things, not the least of which the ethereal.
The gin line.
Yeah, it's one of them because you have the Greylock too. Like, there's a lot that you can do with gin in general, and you're doing a lot with gin. In fact, I'm looking at, like, I think 3 ethereals that I don't think I've ever seen on shelves on our side of the mountain.
Me either, actually.
What was the impetus for the ethereal line, and why do you change it every year?
come on, we're talking about ethereal gin and you're getting a whiskey?
One of the customers is coming out buying a whiskey. We're not going to judge what you buy. It's totally fine.
We're not judging
We're okay
anything.
with it. So we started off with Greylock Gin, which has become our flagship gin. It was a #1 craft gin in the country, New York Times, and was just a great cornerstone for our gin. And it turns out that our still is super slow when you distill something. The good part about that is it's also very gentle on the botanicals. So everyone says, oh, your gin's so fresh. And, people say, I can't drink gin. They had some gincident, drank too much from their parents' liquor cabinet or something. And they say, but I can drink your gins. And so the fact that we make great gins, and then the fact that it's really hard to stay relevant when you're a small craft distiller. So everyone says, what's new? I mean, we put out 12 whiskeys in a year with the Craft Brewers Whiskey Project. And people still came up to us like, what do you have that's new? I'm like, come on. They're whiskey makers that have been around for 100 years and have put out 2 whiskeys. So in terms of being able to stay relevant and put out something new that people are always looking for, when I first started it, they thought I was crazy. And then all of a sudden people say, oh, when's the next batch coming? So it allows us to stay relevant. It allows us to play with things. It allows us to do some benefit type things. So we just did a big benefit gin for Mass Mocha for their 25th anniversary. And then Will can kind of speak to like some of the different things, the different parts of the ethereals we have and how they might be different.
Yeah, so all 3 of these ethereal gins I don't think I've ever seen before.
Same.
As Chris was saying, like with the ethereal gin, it's been such a change over time. So with creating different whiskeys and trying to release a new one every year, you're looking at 4 to 5 years ago we had to come up with a good idea and make sure that it works 5 years from now. The gins is a great thing because we can manipulate just small things in the recipe, very seasonal ingredients, and then gives you a completely different flavor profile and base that you can play with. Over the years of the ethereal gin, up above me we have probably about like 25, 26 different ethereals that we've done. But all of those just differences are different recipes that we've used, different seasonal ingredients. Our current one that we have out on the market that you can buy across the state is our Ethereal Batch 17. It's actually a lemon, cucumber, and basil-based gin.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's lovely. I have that at home now.
Yeah, very summery, very bright, very nice, like long, cool flavors you get off the cucumber. So it's this more like refreshing take. So that and a gin and tonic just kind of blows a standard style out of the water.
And good with gin and soda too. Like I encourage gin and sodas a lot with things where you've got really nice like botanicals that are really aromatic.
So the quinine from the tonic doesn't take over?
Yeah.
Depending on the cocktail you're making too, that gin alone will change the base. So obviously classic martinis, you can go a billion different ways in terms of things you're adding into it. In the modern age, even though it's an older cocktail, I'd say like a Negroni, which is probably the most popular thing you see on every bar menu. This gin alone, because it has those bright citrus and those cucumber flavors, like overshadow this like bitter sweetness that you get in those style of the traditional. It's just something that pops. We do have 2 other gins here. One is an ethereal gin that's part of our garden series. So this is all botanicals that we grow here at the distillery. So we have greenhouses and gardens, throughout the property. So every year, it's what we're harvesting from, the greenhouse that season. So this one in particular has lemongrass, rosemary, fennel, and nasturtium flowers, which add a little bit of this like peppery note. So it's this really punchy, botanical heavy feel. So even different from the ethereal gin with the lemon and cucumber, the lemongrass, rosemary, it's this earthier, like deeper balance. So that in your like even your gin and soda will give you a completely different cocktail base than the one you just tried before. But it still has that signature kind of like BMD flair to it, which kind of connects all of them through.
BMD means Berkshire Mountain Distillers.
Yes. Sorry, it's a mouthful to say. Yeah, when you say it so many times a day, you just try to shorthand it for yourself.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah, it says BMD on the bottle, so it's just trying to be as recognizable to what you're seeing.
And we are at BMD with Chris and Will, who are the folks that are making all of the distilled products from out here in the Berkshires. What's this ethereal gin with a more ominous looking label?
So this is a good cult classic one that has been through the distillery for maybe 7 years now. We call this our Stormy Ethereal Gin. So this is one that we only sell here at the distillery. This actually originally started as our Greylock Gin, and then through a series of
It's fair to say.
just not necessarily complications in the process, but sometimes a product doesn't taste the way you want it to.
The start of Greylock was at least 50 renditions to come up with the formula. And then when we make a new gin or make gins, we sit around and we taste the heads and tails to figure out what cuts we're going to keep. And we all sort of felt that at this one time, after making Greylock for 8 years, it didn't taste quite the same. So whether something happened, there's so much folklore in distilling, but the weather that somebody kicked the still that day, or the botanicals were sourced someplace differently or something, it wasn't that it wasn't Greylock, you wouldn't tell the difference, but since we tasted it all the time, we could. And so we decided to redistill it with a bunch of other stuff, and we put in so many botanicals that the alcohol, being a great solvent and absorber, wouldn't absorb them. So the oil sat in there, so it was cloudy for a long time. And so we just called it Storm Cloud, and finally it settled out. But it became, it was, as Will said, it was kind of a cult classic, and people loved it.
So what did you put the whole kitchen sink in there, or what's in there?
So this is now the third variation we've done. So the Stormy has changed, throughout the years. This one
Now it's been responsible for 34 felony counts.
All I had to do was sign this piece of paper and collect $130,000.
Oh, that's a different Stormy.
Jesus
That's
Christ.
right.
But that was good. That was pretty smooth.
Thank you.
no
Like your gins.
No comment.
Does it become difficult to try and replicate accidental?
Oh, of course.
Right.
Hard to catch lightning in a bottle, but you can put a lightning bolt on the bottle, which you have.
So you're on it.
Yeah.
Wait till you get a couple more drinks in.
Later in the show, a little Nerdwatch with games about traveling and beaches.
And Word Nerd Emily Brewster hurdles us through words Olympic in nature, but next, more of the spirits with Chris Weld and Will Wynn at Berkshire Mountain Distillers.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
One bourbon, one scotch, and one bill.
We're at Berkshire Mountain Distillers in Sheffield, where if you walk in, there's a tasting room, and you can see all the tanks and stills and things going on in the background. And I also see behind you there, Will, there is a Sam Adams labeled Berkshire Mountain whiskey. You've done a lot of collabs with other known products. Tell us about some of the exciting things that you've done recently, or some of the things that may be cooking back there.
Here's the relevant thing. Like, if we don't put something out every week,
Yeah, right.
so pressure's on.
Yeah. So tell us about the Sam Adams one.
So the Sam Adams American Whiskey, this is actually a project that Chris started back in 2012, which was a partnership with the Sam Adams Brewery and Jim Cook at the time, is that we had distilled their Boston Lager and their Cinderbach, which are two of their styles of beer at the time. So it's creating the whiskey from the beer base. So it's actually distilling the beer, so just dumping it directly into our stills and then separating the alcohol. So the whiskeys actually have the same base notes and flavors as the product you're starting with. The one that we have here today is an evolution on that kind of first stage project, which we then partnered with 12 different breweries, all from around the New England and New York area, and then distilled some of their flagship style beers. So obviously Sam Adams Boston Lager being arguably the most popular beer on the East Coast. I don't know.
Started it all off in many ways, in
Yes,
this part of the
exactly.
world at least.
Yes.
So, keeping that in mind as something that we wanted to anchor with as being, one of these bigger breweries, but we've partnered with everyone from across the board. Long Trail Brewing up in Vermont, Smutty Nose in New Hampshire, Two Roads down in Connecticut, Jack's Abbey out in Framingham, Captain Lawrence and Chatham Brewing, which are both based in New York, Harpoon Brewery with their UFO White out in the Boston area. So it's kind of taking all of these different products, different flavors from each beer style, and then as you're distilling it, you're just compounding and concentrating all of the best parts of it. So you're getting, in one bottle, the equivalent of 25 beers in one.
We've had a lot of sort of incestuous forays where we would empty barrels of our bourbon to, say, Omegang.
Yeah.
And they would age something in it, and then we would take those barrels back after they had aged a beer in it for 12 or 18 months. And then we would put bourbon already aged in it, and we had this whole cask series.
We actually walked by some Berkshire Mountain Distilling barrels when we went to go visit Stoneman in Coleraine.
Yeah, that was a great partnership. We've had a lot of fun going back and forth with them. So they pick up barrels from us, and then they do a bunch of their imperial stouts in our bourbon barrels. So then the beer, as Chris was saying, takes on all of these like really rich kind of sweet flavors, vanilla, caramel notes from the whiskey. And then, we occasionally take them back. We put more whiskey into them, re-season the barrel, re-flavor the bourbon, and it's kind of on and on and on as it goes.
Continues.
The circle of life.
And also just isn't with spirits. Barrington Coffee Roasters have used our barrels to age their coffees in. We just did a thing with Bizalions and their olive oil in a barrel age. So we've done myriad projects with different people in the area where it adds character. It gives everyone something new to play with.
Barrels aren't easy to come by, so it's fun that they do get passed around, and it creates this kind of interesting community of distillers and beverage makers to use and reuse these barrels.
And then sometimes those mistakes create cult followings.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes they end up in the pit out back, but once in a while you get lucky and it works out.
The pit out back is called My Liver.
Ah, my liver! My liver!
We're with Will Wynn and Chris Weld at Berkshire Mountain Distillers in Sheffield. Chris Weld, your uncle was the governor of Massachusetts?
What'd you think of him?
I was just telling him on the ride over here, I was at U2's Zoo TV tour in the 90s, and I'm walking around, and I was like, hey, aren't you the governor? Because he was there checking out the show, and he was like, I am, and I then, of course, said, hello, governor, and that was it. I was a little bit too young politically to understand what his deal was, although I will say that in the rise of the Trump era, he's been very outspoken about trying to bring the Republican Party back onto what seems like a more sane plane.
They're sending out messages from Washington, from the RNC, from Trump headquarters saying, don't let there be any discussion. If anybody representing Bill Weld shows up at a Republican committee meeting, move to adjourn. If that doesn't work, move to table. If that doesn't work, then walk out. I don't know why people should be scared of saying the emperor has no new clothes.
But my question for you, as his nephew, what does he think of your product, and does he have a favorite, the former governor of Massachusetts?
Well, he's always been a brown spirits person, so probably the rum or one of the whiskeys.
I have a question about your rum, and I've got a question about the bottle I'm looking at that says Smoke and Pete, where I'm assuming that you're going after a more Scotch profile. I have not had this.
Oh boy, here we go.
Oh no. Yeah. For the rum, you mentioned learning to do rum. So from folks in the islands, your rum follows more of an island style where you're dealing with cane juice, or more of New England style where you're dealing with molasses?
So that's a little complicated because there are a lot of people in the islands that juice and molasses because it's a byproduct, and depending on, there are a lot of subsidies, so it ends up in different places. So I think Appleton's Appleton?
Oh, yeah.
Wonderfully mellifluous, aromatic, high ester, nice drinking rum. My father-in-law was always a huge Barbancourt fan, which is a Haitian pot still.
Yep.
So Appleton mostly being column stuff, Barbancourt pot. So I wanted sort of a blend between the Appleton and the Barbancourt.
That's a good happy place to be, I think. Yeah. But now I'm going to drink bourbon because it's been poured for me.
And it's the Smoke and Pete that Will poured for us.
So the Smoke and Pete, kind of back to this idea of barrel sharing across the industry, and getting flavors from other places, and highlighting different parts of that. So the Smoke and Pete project, this is actually barrels from the Islay region of Scotland. So from a few different distilleries out there that we had imported back to the U.S. And then we've aged our Berkshire bourbon in them for roughly about a year. So you take all of the highlight notes that you get out of those Islay super heavy smoked scotches, almost like a sea salt flavor, really deep, earthy campfire smokiness, and kind of wrap that around our Berkshire bourbon. It'll feel like you're drinking a scotch, but you have the sweetness of American-style whiskeys.
And you're not doing any extra peating or smoking of peat for this. You're just simply using the barrels that Scotch that had been peated was aged in.
The original ones were Lafroig and Ardbeg that we got.
Wow, yeah, those are like top tier. Yeah.
It's the smokiest of the smoky.
Yeah.
So.
Kind of a good stump the chump whiskey.
Oh, totally.
Can I say that? Is
Yeah,
there something
yeah.
wrong with that? I actually like the Smoke and Pete rum more than the Smoke and Pete bourbon.
Wait, there's a Smoke and Pete rum?
There it is.
Whoa.
Funny you asked.
It's like you've got all the Berkshire Mountain distilling products here.
Oh, that's cool.
It's sometimes an interesting sell because you're telling somebody, it's like, oh, it's scotch and it's rum. So it's like the one that I fall most into is like, well, it's like, do you like mezcal?
Yeah.
And they say, yeah, oh, I love that smoky, sweet flavor. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's basically that.
Yeah, this one would stump me more than the other one, I think, too. Yeah, this one is really like, huh? What is it?
And especially because it's got like this neat like green like vegetal note in the middle that seems kind of incongruous. Totally works. Yeah, this is real neat.
Okay, got any secret things that are back there that are coming out sometime soon that people should keep an eye out for? They're looking at each other whether they should admit it or not.
We are.
Chris Weld and Will Wynn from Berkshire Mountain Distillers.
Yeah, it depends on what level of secrecy.
Look, you can always say no comment.
Yeah.
I mean, your uncle was the governor. He knows how to do this, so I'm sure that rubbed off on you.
So we have something pretty epic coming out.
Okay.
That's what you get.
What's changed the most in the distilling industry for you as a company over the past 17 years?
So when I started, there were 50 or so craft distillers in the nation, and now there's, 2,700. So it used to be you went to Boston and say, hey, I have a craft gin, and they said, a what? And now they're going, yeah, there's 7 of them around the corner. And then the other thing that's really changed is that there's been this consolidation of distributors. So it's very hard to get any attention as a small brand. So, the local support that we really enjoy here in the Berkshires is really kind of imperative to keeping us going. And that's the same way with most craft guys. It's just we're still 2% of the spirits are sold in the country, a very small percentage, and the big suppliers just kind of make the rules. On the fun side, there's 2,700 craft distillers making some really cool stuff. Some of it's like the stuff that ends up in the pit out back, and some of it's fantastic. So yeah, if you don't push borders and try. And I think everyone has that, as a started a craft distillery, has that entrepreneurial bent, and they like to push borders, and they like to try new things, and they don't have a bean counter saying, whoa, what are you doing? So there's just been a ton of crazy stuff that's come out that really wasn't around 15 years ago.
Up next, have you been loving the Olympics?
Except for when my tennis score is love.
Why do they say love in tennis and other games instead of saying 0?
I'd love to find out.
And we will next when we talk with senior editor Emily Brewster, our resident wordster from Merriam-Webster in Springfield.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering co-op advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop. NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, with support services designed to help seniors age in place, including a Compass Memory Support Neighborhood. More at armbrookvillage.com.
Happy birthday, Emily Brewster!
Thank you.
Yay, it's Leo season.
Yeah.
Yes.
My own Leo had a birthday, I think, the day before yours, but we bumped you from Wednesday, your regular slot, so that you could enjoy your birthday in peace without radio hosts asking you annoying questions.
That's true. Who's your Leo?
Enzo Belmonte.
Wow.
And Khalees's birthday's coming right up.
Yep,
You're August what?
19th. Yeah, it's a terrible Monday birthday this year. Terrible Monday birthdays.
I told you should take it off.
No,
but
because it's not going to
change
get any better by me being at home when nothing's open to
it.
do.
That's true.
So it's going to come in.
What are we talking about today, Emily Brewster?
Tennis. We're going to talk about love.
Oh, perfect for the Olympics.
That's what I was thinking.
It's interesting because I love, first of all, we're talking with Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster, our dictionary based in Springfield, Massachusetts, on a special Friday edition of the Word Nerd because of the birthday stuff. But it's really fun to watch Merriam-Webster's social media because you can see what things are trending when, given what's going on in the world. And I'm sure there's been some interesting stuff because the Olympics are happening, trending right now in the dictionary. But let's talk about love. What is love?
What is love?
Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me.
We
no
already
more.
did a whole segment about that and that use of love. But let's
Do you
talk.
want to know what love is?
I want to know what love is.
Do you need Emily to show you?
No comment. What is love when it has to do with tennis?
Love is such an interesting word, right? And sometimes it means nothing, which is very, very strange. I mean, it actually means, it's not that it has no meaning at all. It's that it actually means the absence of anything. It means nothing. It means no points whatsoever.
But why only in tennis? Like even the soccer or football fans call it nil.
It's not actually only tennis, or it wasn't originally tennis. If anybody out there still plays whist, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the game where you try to like take over Eurasia?
Ha 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 ha.
Oh no, that's Risk, right? What is this game that you're speaking of?
Whist. It's like spades, but you use all of the suits for trump. It's often played in pairs.
So it's like a blue suit with an extra long tie. Oh, not that trump.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
Whist uses love and tennis uses love.
So sad right now.
Yes. Card games, right? Because before, go back a couple centuries, and card games were what we had to entertain ourselves and our friends. So card games, there's actually a great deal of playing card vocabulary that remains in our dictionaries because the words used to be such an important part of the vocabulary of the speakers. But I stumble across these obscure card-related terms pretty often, and it's kind of fun. But yes, in the 1700s, we have examples from the 1700s of people using the word love to mean no score at all in whist and in other card games. I believe it was mentioned in Hoyle's instructions for card playing game. But what is up with this love? We don't really know where it comes from. Do either of you have a theory, or have you heard of a theory, or do you have an idea?
No idea.
No.
I mean, why? Is it at all etymologically connected to the love that we usually think about when we talk about love?
Possibly. That is the better theory. There is another theory that has been raised, which is that it actually is an anglicization of the French word for egg.
Oh.
L'œuf.
L'œuf?
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
That does make a lot of sense.
Especially because the Olympics are in Paris.
Well, I mean, and zeros kind of look like eggs.
Yeah, then people will call it a goose egg if you don't get any,
Yeah, it's a goose egg when you get nothing.
Right. So
That's right. Or in British English, it's a duck egg or a duck's egg. Yeah. So there is this association of eggs with the number 0, but there is no evidence in French of l'œuf being used to mean 0. So they don't do that. They actually use the word zéro.
Zéro.
Because that goes back to Arabic, but it's
Right.
through Latin. So yes, that is not the reason that the score of 0 in tennis is called love.
Oh, I liked that as a theory, though. Dang it.
Yeah, it's a nice theory. It is more likely, and again, there is nothing to confirm this fully, but it is more likely that it comes from the idea of playing for the love of the game.
Well, you stink if you have love, so that's the only reason you be playing, right?
Actually, I mean, oftentimes when we're playing games at either start playing games at the Brass Cat or wherever I happen to be playing board games, if I am losing by a lot, people will ask me what my score is, and I will reply, "I played this game."
So it's really like an encouraging way to say that you stink real bad, that you're just playing for the love.
It's like, I'm playing the game. I'm enjoying myself. Don't ask me what my score is. That's sad. Why would you make me sad? I'm enjoying myself.
Well, yeah, I think that's a beautiful response, actually.
I guess.
You're playing for the love of the game. I am not a competitive person, so I'm always just playing for the love of the game, if I'm playing at all. The word amateur is, also used for people who are not very good at games. That word also it comes from Latin amare, meaning to love. So there is also this association with, not being so great at something and the word love.
I love this. I think amateur comes from the word love too, because you're doing it just for the love, amor of it, the amorature. I'm an amorature.
Amorature? That seems like amorature and aperture should be related somehow.
Or an armoire that you're in love with.
It is the weirdest thing to me, but it's good.
I am building something out of my feelings. It may come to nothing. I suppose that fits too.
Amateur was also borrowed from French. The Latin root is between the French and amare, meaning to have affection, love, be in love, make love to. That one, the origin of the Latin word is not clear, but amateur, meaning lover, enthusiastic, admirer, devotee. This is where amateur comes from. So I guess the original amateur was, I don't know, an amateur lover?
Or somebody who was just a devotee of a thing and doing it for the love. And maybe your only score is going to be love. And this is kind of amazing. You know how there's all these people that say, what if you put an ordinary person in the Olympics to go right after all the actual Olympians to show how athletic these people actually are as a counterbalance? I would watch nothing but the Olympics if that happened.
I mean, I would actually love that too. And not just because of that, but like, imagine you're the person who gets chosen, who only got chosen because they really love doing this thing. There's something really compelling and wonderful about just seeing somebody who really loves doing the thing, do the thing. It's why I'd say karaoke is the great equalizer, because nobody cares how good you sing, how well you sing.
That's true.
They care if you're having a good time.
Never, 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 never to know when the Santa Fe tonight.
Or there's my favorite fluting, which is the person who just takes a recorder and plays over all of your favorite hits in the worst way. It is one of my favorite things in the entire world, how they just go for broke playing this thing terribly.
Yep.
For love.
Amateur. They're an amateur, and it's often used as an insult, but now we can claim it back and say, no, 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 I am an amateur. I just love this.
But it means that we're going to have to find like a new word for the chuckle nuts that we were actually trying to insult.
Yeah, that's true. There's no
chuckle nut might work.
Chock full of chuckle nuts. I challenged Congressman Jim McGovern to go on the pommel horse on yesterday's show because the guy who pushed the Americans into the medal category is from Worcester, his hometown. Again, I'd pay lots of money to see that happen in real time.
He was astonishing. That was so
great. Good. That guy's the coolest nerd. Somebody took his picture and photoshopped it on the cover of the Radiohead album, The Bends, where it's got that dude who kind of looks nerdy leaning back, and I was like, this is it. This is perfect.
Baby's got the bends. Oh no.
Anyway, do we have more Olympic-related words besides love and amateur that come from the same place, a love of the game only, even if you get 0 points?
And even if you don't know where the games came from, so you keep thinking that they're insulting Christianity?
Yeah, which they might have been slightly.
It was Bacchus, wasn't it?
Yeah, but then it was like also set up to look like the Last Supper, depending on who you asked who was in the thing.
It wasn't. It's a bacchanalia. That was intentionally a bacchanalia to refer to the origin of the Olympics, which in and of itself was not just an event to herald what the human body can do, but to herald the gods as well, like the multiple gods. Like, you watching the Olympics is already putting you on like a straight path to hell if this is where we're going.
They should return the Olympics to doing it all naked, which is how they did it for the first 100 years. Everybody was naked all the time.
Yeah, but there were also only 12-ish events, so.
Yeah, even there was one at the beginning. Just running. Has the dictionary, Emily Brewster, seen an uptick in lookups for things that have Olympic connections to them because of the Olympics?
Oh, you know what?
How about monotonous for the opening ceremonies? Like, where the hell is Celine Dion? I've been watching this for 2 hours.
She's at the bottom of the sea. That's what happens when you bring Celine Dion together with boats.
I actually have not been paying attention to lookups. I do not know. But I do know that the word Olympian has historically some use meaning lofty.
Oh, yeah.
Like Mount Olympus, I'm assuming, is where it comes from, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably
and
a
the
lofty
idea
place.
is that, the Greek gods who lived on Mount Olympus could look down at the realm of the humans and intervene. They could do whatever they wanted, right? They could mess with people's lives. And they insisted on being worshipped, of course. So there's this idea of the Olympians, who are originally not the human competitors, but the gods themselves, the inhabitants of Mount Olympus, as being lofty and above it all.
There was a great article in the New York Times Magazine from last Sunday where it talks all about the early history of the Olympics and how important, if you won the Olympic event, the next 4 years would be the era of you. That was how important it was as a way to be honored and to honor those gods.
Wow.
So like Khalees said, if you're watching the Olympics, you're already a pagan.
Mm-hmm. I don't make the rules.
I grew up believing this to be true, and this ties back into the nudity thing again.
Why?
That the Olympics used to be all nude.
And all men.
And all men. And that gymnasium means place of nakedness. Is this true? I'm asking the dictionary itself.
Isn't gymnasium German origin, though?
I don't think so.
There is a German term, gymnasium, that refers to a European secondary school, but that comes from the Latin word for school. So, Khalees, you're brilliant again, of course. Well, the Latin word gymnasium, or however they said it, meant exercise ground or school, and came from a Greek word. The Greek word does mean to exercise naked. Woo! Yeah.
So the Christians can't send their kids to PE either.
Yeah, gymnos means naked.
Place of nakedness. So I used to say, of course.
Let's go to the naked place.
No, when I was in high school and it was gym class, I'd
do all of those things for the presidential medal.
It's time to go to the place of nakedness.
Well, to exercise naked.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what it meant. It was a verb. It was a place for naked exercising.
Well, I love this. And by love, I mean gain no points. And also am a rank amateur when it comes to exercising naked.
We're in it for the love of the game.
I hate exercising in front of people in general. That's why it's such a big leap that I do Kung Fu 3 nights a week.
It's different when it's group activity.
Yeah.
Like, I feel the same way about, like, dance.
But I don't want to see anybody to watch me jogging, especially if I'm naked.
Why are you jogging naked? Are you just trying to get back to the source?
I'm old school.
Are you trying to have a historic experience?
Yeah. I also read in the New York Times that they'd oil themselves up, and then they would take the sweat and oil after they had won and turn it into a medicine. That's not.
I mean, that sounds like it's of the time, for sure.
Yeah. Emily Brewster, do you watch any of the Olympics? Are you enjoying any of the Olympics that have been going on?
Yes, I have been. I mean, I'm really just watching clips here and there because I don't have TV.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's fantastic. It's astounding, right? These people are. It's really inspiring to see people pushing themselves in these ways and accomplishing so much.
I can't wait for the first event of breakdancing.
Oh, when is that?
It's coming up towards the end of the Olympics, one of the last Olympic events, and it's the first time they're doing it.
And again, I genuinely have questions about this as an event. And it's going to be straight up dance battle. Like, apparently no teams, like just individual on individual. And a panel of judges. It's just a dance battle.
Could be awesome.
Could be awesome.
I can't wait till the next Olympics when it's breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo.
No, we said Olympic Boogaloo.
Right.
Olympic
Boogaloo.
Olympic Boogaloo.
Do you have any more dictionary advice, Emily Brewster, for us? As we've just started to have so much fun talking about the Olympics in general. Any more words from your hallowed dictionary that are informative to us in this time of the Olympics?
Oh, many. But you know, our listeners should just go to Merriam-Webster.com and poke around.
If you have a question for the Word Nerd, you can email us and we will ask it on your behalf. thefab413@nepm.org. Thanks as always, Emily Brewster.
Thank you.
Congratulations on another revolution of the sun.
Thank you.
Now 1, 2, 3, 4. Get up, everybody. Get on the floor.
That is Ice-T from the original movie Breakin'.
See him in it. He has the most amazing perm.
Yeah.
It is wild.
It's the softer side of Ice-T.
Well, it's the younger side of Ice-T, too.
Crystal Light. I believe in Crystal Light because I believe in Ice-T.
I can't have it. I'm allergic.
If listeners of the show haven't already figured this out, Khalees is an uber nerd.
Hello.
And Khalees loves games.
I do. I have far too many of them. So up next, games that will help your meeples travel to wherever they desire if you cannot. It's Nerdwatch.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
NEPM's podcasts are funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, offering assisted living and compass memory support with evidence-based treatment for those with memory loss. More at armbrookvillage.com.
Now, are you ready to play the game?
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Khalees Smith.
On my previous show, Khalees and I had a segment called Nerdwatch, where Khalees would come in every week and talk to us about the nerdy, especially games, but also sometimes manga and anime.
Sometimes anime, sometimes just like writ large genre fiction, because I am a multifaceted nerd. I have my hands in many pots.
If it weren't for that segment, we probably wouldn't be a duo on this radio show right now.
That's true.
And since I'm going to the beach directly after the show is over, and Khalees is not.
No.
Khalees is going to tell you how if you are not going to the beach, you can live vicariously through these games like she will while I am at the beach.
Yes. which is kind of hilarious.
I'll also say, Khalees always has games with her at all times. And here are some of the times in recent memory that they have come in extraordinarily handy. 1, waiting for the solar eclipse back in April. Khalees and my 2 kids, we played games for several hours waiting for the sun to eclipse. 2, when the lightning struck near the Green River Festival and we were having to shelter in place inside in the green room, my son Enzo again, Khalees and I playing games. 3, Pizza Quest, Country Pie, Ashfield. It took a while for that pizza to come out. Khalees went to the car, grabbed some games, and we had a great time.
I always have games on me, literally. It's a little upsetting. But like, now people know that I just carry them with me, and so if we're stuck someplace, they're like, "So what if you got on you?" And I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah, it's like before I adopted the cell phone. I used to have cell friends. As long as you knew somebody had a cell phone you could borrow, that was good enough. So you're like my game friend. So what are the games that you want to talk about today on Nerdwatch, Khalees?
Okay, so the first one I'm going to mention is one that if you were at Start Playing Games on this past Wednesday at the Brass Cat, you got a chance to learn because it was their featured game, and it's called Beacon Patrol. It's a co-op game. It's a tile-laying game where you and your friends are members of the Coast Guard, and you're building the coast of the North Sea and just trying to make sure that everybody is safe and that nothing bad happens.
It's like Baywatch, the board game.
Kind of.
It's called Beacon Patrol?
Beacon Patrol. And there's expansions that allow like ships and businesses to come into it and kind of throw little wrenches in your whole system. But it's really cute and really easy to learn and very fast.
Talk about cooperative games and why they're games that you like more than other types of games.
I'm not always in a competitive mood. So like cooperative games, I think, allow people to come together and come to communal solutions in a way that I would really love to see reflected in the rest of life. So it's almost like a fantasy, like living the fantasy dream of having society work.
Interesting that the game of life, which is an actual board game, I don't think is a cooperative game.
No, it definitely
you
isn't.
You are trying to like outcapitalize other people.
And co-op games are not for everybody because you do have to. There is a give and take. Like the thing that I find people don't like about cooperative games is that like somebody will come to the table and will do what is colloquially termed quarterbacking, which is like they start handing out orders to everybody else, and that just makes it stop being a team game. It makes it start being their game, and you're just there to like move meeples and not really have as good a time.
You mentioned meeples several times.
Oh,
I don't
sorry.
know if everybody knows what a meeple is.
So actually, this is hilarious because there's a whole thing going on about this particular term and what it means right now. There's a couple of lawsuits happening about it. But a meeple is a figurine in a board game that kind of looks like a person. It was initially in, I think, the company that's trying to patent the word and the shape had them in the game Carcassonne, and it wasn't actually them that coined the term. It was a fan of the game that coined the term, and they kind of took it over. It's a whole thing. There are videos about it on YouTube that you can find in your own time.
It's also interesting that if you play the video game console series, the Wii from Nintendo, that the Wii was called the Me. So Me and Meeples kind of have this similar thing. Okay,
and now like board games all across the board have pretty much like adopted that as the language, which is why it's a whole thing of contention.
It's going to be like Band-Aid, where it's no longer exclusively a proprietary term.
Yes.
So Beacon Patrol is Beach Game 1, where you're building a shore, the Baywatch of beach games.
Yes.
What's another beach-related game if you're not going to the beach?
Okay, so I'm looking at my list and realizing a lot of these are co-ops. Haha. So we've got one where it's basically lost the game. I might have talked about this on the other show. It's called Ravine. So a plane has gone down in the middle of the night, and you were on it, and you wake up on this island, and you have to survive the island and the other things that live there until help shows up.
It's like Lost.
It is.
The video game.
Yes, except
I saw a meme that said, what is the greatest television pilot of all time? And somebody had put Lost. And the retort to that was, if it were Lost, the pilot would have landed the plane.
There we go.
Tell me more about Ravine.
So, again, like you have this group of people that have survived this crash, and every night something happens to your camp. Usually it's supernatural, sometimes it's animals, sometimes it's terrible weather events that get rid of your fire and make everybody sick. And then during the day, whoever is well enough to go out goes out to see if you can find things to help you survive. That might be materials to make a house, or like things to gather more food, finding food itself. And like you decide how to distribute those things to try and help as many of your group survive, because everybody wins as long as one person gets off this island.
And again, cooperative games. So you're all trying to work together.
Yep.
People may wonder, where are these games available? Can you go to like stores locally and find these games?
Yeah, all of the games that I've mentioned so far are available publicly. They're like Greenfield Games in Greenfield will have them. You can find them on Amazon. Sometimes you can find them in Target. But these are all, I haven't mentioned anything that is out of print.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yet.
Which no, these are all pretty popular. So
Okay,
like
good.
you can still find them.
So we've got Ravine, which is the Lost of games. We've got Beacon Patrol, which is the Baywatch of games. They're not all loosely based on television
They are
shows,
not.
I'm assuming.
They are not at all. And I'm about to bring in, we're going to take a little bit of a stretch and talk about ships instead. And I'm going to mention Isle of Cats. And its partner, which is a co-op game, Race to the Raft. So Isle of Cats, I
love cats too.
Yeah, right. But there's this island of cats, and the island is in distress, shall we say. There's a whole mythology about this that you can read about on the site. But you are trying to rescue these cats, but also their island is full of treasure, so you have to balance out taking cats and taking cat treasure so that you can, finance your whole trip. And you want to cover as much of your ship with treasure and cats as possible.
I think that's the Democratic Party right now, right? Aren't they the party of cat ladies? That's what I have been led to believe. So this must be, if you're a Democratic person, this is a game right up your alley.
It is a pretty great game. The Isle of Cats is a competitive game. Now, in the same world and kind of the same system, Race to the Raft, on the other hand, is a cooperative game where you are still trying to rescue these cats, but suddenly their island is on fire. So this is becoming real imperative that you save them as quickly as possible.
Wait, there are two rescuing cat-related
There are two rescuing cat-related games. They are situated in essentially the same universe, the same world.
Are they made by the same people?
They're made by the same people.
All right, that makes sense.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But again, one is competitive and the other one is cooperative. Yeah, Race to the Raft has some terrible person trying to kill these cats by setting their island on fire, and you are trying to rescue these cats from the island, which is now under even more distress. And it is interesting.
Race to the Raft, cooperative. Yep. Isle of Cats, competitive.
Yes.
Ravine, the Lost of games.
Mm-hmm.
Beacon Patrol, the Baywatch of games. Still focusing on beach-related games if you're not going to the beach, like Khalees is not, for when I am going to the beach later today.
Yes, indeed.
Do you have more games?
I do. I have a whole list.
Yeah,
We're going to make it not through this whole list that I made. I was over-prepared. So one last co-op.
Okay.
But it is a fun one. It is Colonialism in Reverse. I am going to mention
That's the name of the game?
No.
Oh.
But it is the spirit of the game. In fact, the name of the game is Spirit Island. So what you're doing in this game is you are playing the deities of the indigenous peoples of this land. And colonizers from various countries have shown up on your shores, and you are trying to use both the land, their inherent fear of the people and the land, and the people themselves to shoo all of these colonizers out. But they spread at an alarming rate. They have terrible abilities, and sometimes they ruin the land that they go on to. So it's a really interesting balancing act between whoever you're working with to try and get powers that complement each other so that you can survive long enough and have enough of the land intact at the end to withstand the onslaught of getting rid of these colonizers.
This might be a good time to mention that the Becumtuck Homeland Festival is happening on the banks of the Connecticut River.
He's a master.
At Unity Park this Saturday and Sunday.
In fact, and you can hear more information about that this weekend on the Fabulous 413 weekend. We'll be mentioning some of that.
So that one's called Spirit Island. I think we probably have time for one more game.
Okay. So let's see. Okay. So this one is not necessarily about the beach. It is more about the ocean, but it is super, super cute. It is called Sea Salt and Paper. And all of the art on it is origami. And you're trying to collect sets. Sets will make points. But the way that you have to go about making sets is a a little contentious. Like, you only have like 2 options really for what's available and then what's in your hand, and so you have a very limited amount of time to get as many points as you're able. And it's a really great, very beautiful, very fast game.
So when you say it's origami, are you actually playing with like little pieces of origami paper?
No, it's just the pictures on the cards themselves.
So you don't actually have to do or be good at origami
no,
to be
you just
good
get
at this
to
game.
watch the wonderful art that is already printed on these cards as you're making your sets.
Khalees Smith's Nerdwatch. What games do you have on you right now?
Oh my God, I think it's just still the same things that I had when we went to Country Pie. I have Tussie Mussy because I almost always have Tussie Mussy. It's a Victorian game about flowers. It's wonderful. I have Hot Dog. I have Sprawlopolis, and in my car is Grizzled. I have Ravine in my car, and Codenames.
What was the game that we played at Country Pie?
We played Chicken.
I love that one.
Chicken is a super fun, easy game about stealing chickens.
All the games Khalees Smith mentioned today on her Nerdwatch: Beacon Patrol, Ravine, Isle of Cats, Race to the Raft, Spirit Island, and Sea Salt and Paper. Take them to the beach, or don't go to the beach and play them at home while I'm at the beach.
Yep. Yeah.
Next,
They're all fun.
They are all fun. Well, I haven't played them all, but the ones that you've played with me so far have all been fun.
I try to curate well.
You do. Next week on the Fabulous 413, we're getting our summer reading in.
With a new book from David Daly about the plight of the American voting rights and more.
Oh, that won't be depressing at all. But one more book from Kathy Stanton about making Western Mass foodways happen in Orange.
We'll hear musicians playing in our area with Kathleen Parks doing solo work. She's from Twisted Pine, Homebody, and Cheryl Bailey.
A little bit of jazz guitar. We'll celebrate the diaspora with the African Community Festival.
And we'll meet the voice of C-3PO in the brand new Ojibwe dub of Star Wars: A New Hope.
I can't wait.
It's going to be so awesome.
I'm Monty Belmonte.
I am Khalees Smith. Thanks so much to Bart Rankin for running our board all week.
And for coming with us to Mass Mocha.
Indeed. We'll talk to you all on Monday. Have fantastic weekends, everybody.